Hello, it's Mark here from Yokel Bear Reads. It's been a while. I've not posted any videos because I've moved house, and that's the reason why my September TBR went completely off the rails. I had all these plans to read the books that I showed you in the last video. Hasn't happened. In fact, I barely read at all. This move's been a little bit complicated for various reasons. Just in terms of my stuff was in storage and having to get it out, and then there was a delay in moving house, and I ended up on somebody's sofa bed for a while. So it's been a bit of a month, and I just really didn't find time for reading. And when I did, I was just too tired to do it. Also, as well, took about a week or so to get the internet connected. So yeah, so I'm in my new house. This is my new house. In fact, I should give you a quick tour, I reckon. So let's have a look around the house, shall we? What have we got here? I've got my bookshelves up. Have a look at those. Yes, lots of bookshelves. Also got my garden, which is small but perfectly formed, and there's a fox that comes along some nights. But yeah, like I said, I've got my bookshelves up. I'm really pleased. I built these, assembled these myself, and we've got a few things that my little golden dinosaur plant pot holder, and there's Terry. That's Terry. It's the creature from the Black Lagoon. I got Terry a while back, but me and some friends decided it was a bit bad that the creature from the Black Lagoon doesn't have a name, like Dracula has a name. So we called him Terry. So that's Terry, the creature from the Black Lagoon. So there's lots of my books and my living room. And get a load of my bed, my new bed. Well, I say new, it's original Victorian bedstead, like proper mahogany and iron, and it's really comfortable. It's been reconditioned. And got the kitchen, and as you can see, it's very quiet out the front there. And my bathroom. That's about it really, it's a very small flat. So basically I was going to do some reviews, but I can't because I haven't read any books, or at least I did, but I kind of kept putting them back down, haven't really finished them, and I kept starting them again, and I think sometimes when you had a big kind of upheaval in your life, like moving house, I think sometimes just life gets in the way, doesn't it? So this is my revised September, beginning of October TBR, because I've kind of put those other books to one side. I think I'm going to pick them up again later. But as autumn's arrived and the nights are drawing in and it's getting darker, I was in the mood for maybe something a little bit spooky. And I picked up a book that I'm about a third of the way through, which is Wychwood by George Mann. Now, George Mann is probably better known for some of his steampunk stuff, the Affinity Engine, I think, and the Osiris Ritual. But this is very much set in the modern day, in the real world. Oh, there's a little cat in my garden that's not mine. Oh, seems to be enjoying himself. Basically, this is a kind of procedural police thing. Set in a village in Oxfordshire, which is originally where my family came from, in kind of the rural area of Oxfordshire. And it's basically about Elspeth Reeves, who is a journalist who splits up with her partner in London and moves back to the village she was brought up in. And there's been a murder. Well, there's been lots of murders. And they're a little bit spooky because they seem to be recreating this ancient legend. So I love this stuff. There's a genre that kind of doesn't really get spoken about much, but if you know films like The Wicker Man and The Witchfinder General, and they call it folk horror, which is horror that's kind of set in the English countryside, because there is nothing more eerie than the English countryside. In fact, Robert Macfarlane, the travel writer, the nature writer, actually wrote an essay, and I'll link to it below, about the eeriness of the English countryside. And this is kind of part of it. This is a rural area. It's a touch of supernatural. Something's not quite right. There's references to the occult and ancient folklore and stuff like that. And I think this is the beginning of the perfect time of year to be reading this stuff. You know, when the wind's blowing through the trees at night, and I've got trees outside that whistle like anything, you know, when the wind's going. It gets a bit scary. I've also got bats as well. There's bats that fly around the garden. And also, I'm literally 5 minutes away from one of Bristol's biggest cemeteries. For somebody who likes this kind of stuff, I'm living in the perfect area right now. But the great thing about this, I picked up not just this one, but there is also a sequel that's just come out, Hallowdene, and I figured that this was a great thing to be, as we're heading towards Halloween, this would be a great thing to read. But also as well, I picked up a couple of other books because I really like, I've mentioned that I've moved in next to a cemetery. Now, I love a good graveyard, I really do. I was brought up next to one, like the first 5 years of my life. I lived next to a cemetery, or at least the early part of my life, I lived next to a cemetery. There wasn't really anywhere else to play, so, you know, me and my friends played in the cemetery. So they don't really scare me, and I find them fascinating because there's history, there's wildlife, there's stuff like that. So I've picked up a couple of books that have been on my shelf for a long, long time. And I've read this one before, but I'm going to give it a reread, which is Necropolis by Catharine Arnold. It's a history book, and it's the history of how London has dealt with essentially disposing of the dead, how they buried people, and it goes all the way from kind of Bronze Age times through Roman times. It goes through the kind of plagues, the Black Death and the plague of 1665, was it? Right up to modern times and through Victorian times, about how people dealt with death and how they dealt with people's bodies and where they were buried and the whole history of that. It's a little bit macabre, but I kind of like it. So I figured that was a good one to read since I've just moved into a cemetery, and I'm probably going to be spending quite a lot of time wandering around that cemetery. But linked to that as well is also Carl Watkins's The Undiscovered Country, Journeys Amongst the Dead. And this is a very similar thing. It says on the back, we know what happens to a body when we die, but what happens to the soul? The answer remains the great unknown. But the question shapes centuries of tradition, folklore and religious belief. And that's what he goes through. They've described it as a vivid history of the macabre. He goes through ancient customs, local characters and compelling tales that illuminate how we've come to terms with our ultimate fate as a society, as individuals and what have you. As autumn's drawing in, yeah, I think these books are kind of valid. So that's kind of my TBR. I did read one though, and I'm going to save that for another review. It was I actually read a children's book, and I was a little bit disappointed because on paper it should have been something that I'd really enjoy, but I'll do a separate review of that. Yeah, so that's why I've not been around, that's why I've not posted anything, that's why my TBR went off like a train going off the track. So forget about the previous video. September TBR, yeah, didn't happen. This is the kind of TBR, emergency TBR. So yeah, but basically I'm back. I've got broadband. I've got a lovely new house. It's just lovely. So I will be posting more. Okay, if you like my videos, if you want to click like down below, if you want to get notifications when I posted stuff, press subscribe and the little bell thingy. So that's it. It's goodbye from me, and it's goodbye from Terry. This is the cemetery that I mentioned. This is Greenbank Cemetery in Bristol. as you can see, it's huge and it's brilliant. Absolutely love this place. So I'll probably be spending some time in here, looking around, looking at the graves, finding out a bit more about it.